Hey, this is Spencer Hilligross, and you are listening to the Passive Investor Show.
The views and opinions provided on this show are for informational purposes only and should not be misinterpreted as an offer to buy or sell any securities or to make or consider any investment or course of action. For more information, please go to passiveinvestorshow.com.
And now, the Passive Investor Show. Here's your host, John Fortes.
Welcome, PI listeners, to the Passive Investor Show. I'm John Fortes. Our goal and purpose of this show is to be a resource to passive investors and help them master their investments in real estate funds. My guest today is Spencer Hilligross. His company, Madison Investing, has co-sponsored deals totaling more than 4,000 units for more than $500 million. Spencer invests in the syndication as an LP and actively leads Madison Investing alongside his co-founder, wife, Jennifer Morimoto. As a technology leader, Spencer built a 13-year track record growing high-performance teams across 5 companies, 3 of them unicorns, valued at more than $1 billion. In November 2009, Spencer retired from his lucrative technology career, leaving behind $4 billion loan origination teams he built at Lending Home, funding 600 fixed flips transactions per month. Now he is focused on spending time with loved ones and growing Madison Investing by helping passive investors achieve their goals. And we're grateful to have you, Spencer. Thank you for coming, man.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, John. It's really great to come on your show, particularly because you and I connected a while back, and there's just a lot of value to be gleaned, learning about this stuff. And it's important to get the message out to folks who have not yet been exposed to it. So thank you for everything you do.
I appreciate you, man. And I appreciate what you do because we speak to passive investors, we educate them, and tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into that.
Yeah, it was very organic for us, John. So yeah, I run Madison Investing right now, but that wasn't always the case. So, these days we help folks invest passively in multifamily deals, storage deals, and mobile home parks. But if you had brought those terms up to me, I would say, 6 years ago, I would have said, what are you even talking about? So I grew up in Silicone Valley, and I, as an adult, got into the local business, and local business is technology companies. So I had a 13-year career in 5 different software companies, building and leading these operations and sales groups, like these high growth, high velocity sales groups, hiring a ton of people, coaching them up, grooming them, building processes for scale, all these wonderful things. And frankly, I enjoyed it a lot. It was super hard, and there was times where it was brutal, but I'm not going to be the guy who gets on a real estate centered podcast and says, screw the W-2 world. That's not my story. And so it was a wonderful journey. Flash way back even before that. And I just want to briefly mention that I used to hide the fact my dad was one of the top performing residential real estate brokers in the United States back in the 90s. And so I got exposure as a kid, as early as like 6 years old, basically. I guess technically that's how long I've been in real estate, if people want to get specific about it. And there's photos of me on like vacant plots of land when he was trying to sell these deals in the Bay Area. And he eventually made me work inside of his business as a teenager. So I watched that business thrive. I had to go and put on open houses for multi-million-dollar mansions, and I absolutely hated it. So I ran screaming out of that to go into technology. And frankly, it isn't considered cool to go to your friends and your family and your colleagues in Silicon Valley and say that you do real estate instead of tech. So I did also, by the way, watch his business completely crumble on the heels of some really hard times. And so I learned a lot during those hard times. And I'll wrap this up by just saying, I watched that business crumble after I lost my brother to cancer, my younger brother, watched my parents get divorced, watched a bunch of other just really tough stuff happen. And his active income from that business went from very high numbers to almost zero. And our family had to downsize, had to scale down, all this stuff. So I watched that happen. I was in there when it happened. And as an adult now with my own kids and my own family that depend on me, I apply the learnings and observations from that time. And I help educate others, because that's the stuff that got me looking for other ways to build a financial future. And how could I be more present with my kids? I want to be a great dad. I want to be a present husband and father and all this stuff. So working 60, 80 hours a week for tech companies, expecting the next Facebook or Google to come from my startup equity was not a good plan. That's the plan most people in Silicon Valley try to run. They try to go and get out of jail free by having their one lucky startup hit the big lottery, right? And so, all that said, these days we now invest our own money into syndications and multifamily and self-storage mobile home park deals. And when we do that, we're also doing that alongside, many other people that are investing with us into these deals after we've vetted them and curated them, all that stuff. So long-winded answer to your question, but that's kind of been my foray into real estate at the ripe old age of 36, about to be 37 this month, and excited to bring the education to other folks.
That is a lot to unpack. This, first and foremost, sorry for your losses, but also you sounded like you learned a lot going through your father's experience, and it's almost like a watch and learn process. And I love how you adopted it into your lifestyle. Can you tell us what your first deal looked like? First deal that you invested in, and then what did that look like for creating opportunities for other people that were interested?
Yeah, so we did go through those logical steps that so many of us do before we get to looking at the bigger, better sides of like big multifamily, John. So when my wife and I, Jennifer and I, we weren't quite comfortable buying sight unseen. Long distance investing is a pretty tall order for folks who are not comfortable with real estate in general. So we weren't either, despite growing up in a real estate family, despite working at Lending Home, which is the biggest fix and flip lender in the country. I wasn't there yet, and we weren't there yet. So we bought a local duplex in the Bay Area. We way overpaid for it. And we thought, okay, cool. We're going to get, quote unquote, passive income from this. It cost $430,000. And so we got a loan on it. We didn't spend that cash. But I just bring that up as an example because we still own that duplex today. It's in Vallejo, and it is cash flowing for roughly, $250 a month. And so if we could do that again, we absolutely would do that differently. It's appreciating, it's gone up in value, but if we could spend that same, $110,000, we would have stretched out those dollars way further for generating truly passive income if we had put that into places outside of the very expensive Bay Area. And so I brought that up as the true real estate investing first deal, not including our home in the Bay Area, which is a whole separate topic because affordability is so darn hard here. The first commercial deal was actually, it was out in Dallas, and we were working with a coaching program, and I'm a firm believer in coaching programs. I'm on my fourth one now within real estate. I think you pay for quality coaching and you work your butt off to actually apply those learnings. And I think it tends to accelerate your growth, both personally as well as your business. So the kind of things that we looked for in those deals was big enough to be stable, meaning that duplex that I told you this quick story about, John, when one of those tenants leaves, well, the income from the property gets cut in half. If you buy a single family home, because we also bought a bunch of turnkey properties in the Midwest before we found big apartments, when one of those tenants leaves, the occupancy drops to 0 from 100%. So those are some of the things that I wanted to avoid when we went to this first Dallas deal. And so we invested in that along with many other people with a coach and all these things. And so we actually got in there, and it really, really clicked. It clicked for us that, well, maybe this is something I should not just do on nights and weekends. Like maybe this is something that we can also help people with, because so many folks in our network started to kind of get excited when we tell them a story about what we're working on. And it wasn't necessarily going to be a job. It wasn't going to be what I'm sitting here doing now, which is like my full-time real estate investing career. But it's really become a passion point and a joy to be able to bring this to so many other people that don't have an exit strategy from the tech grind of 60, 80 hours a week. Can
you just walk us through the first time you handled, or you worked with, or you partnered with passive investors?
Yeah, and it started so small because when you first approach people, the first kind of rung of folks that expressed interest and actually were comfortable with us were people that we know personally. And that is where it should start, because everyone talks about, before you work with someone, you got to vet the who. And so if they already know you, and in this case, there's a few folks that were executives, leaders within tech companies. They said, okay, well, we know you've been in real estate. We know that you kind of grew up with it. Let's just try this out with you too. And so they came in and invested with us. It wasn't until a few deals later where we really realized, okay, we want to take this bigger, and we want to do it better. And by better, what I mean is, once we got past all of those first degree connections and everyone kind of knew about it within our own personal network, John, like, we decided, let's go. We don't know enough. Like, we don't know enough about who we're trying to help here. We don't know enough about who we're trying to serve. And so we actually went and did a bunch of interviews, like, and it was like no pitch interviews. I don't want to show anyone a deal. What I want to do is learn. So put together an interviewed 50, 60 people somewhere in there out of my second degree connections on LinkedIn, not my first, via introductions. And I just wanted to ask them questions like, what is your relationship with money? How do you manage your portfolio? Like, how do you think about making investments? What's the stuff that you consider before you actually do that? Because the folks we're trying to serve, we don't want to come at them with something and just have it be a pitch. We want it to be something where, frankly, we're just showing them our own personal wealth plan, because we invest in our own deals that we put in front of them. So that's the kind of stuff that was critically important early on. It was just helping us understand what are the people that we're trying to help actually care about, and like, what do they consider boring? We don't want to hit them with industry speak, jargon, terminology. We want them to feel like they can actually wrap their heads around and still be actually passive, because that's what, as you already know so well, John, like, that's what people fear, is they don't want to be the person who goes and buys their first real estate deal, and they buy a single family home, and they get the 1 a.m. calls about the broken toilet, and they have to go fix it because they don't have a property manager, yada yada. They want something where they can invest reliably with 50K, 100K, 200K plus, depending on their financial footing, and then feel like they can go back about their lives. And so that's what we took away from, I'm being very brief with it, but like, that's the kind of stuff we took away from those interviews, was people are ready to talk about this, but they don't want to be drowned in jargon, and they don't want to go nerd out as hard as I did. So we had to help them bridge that gap educationally.
I completely understand. And another thing that hit is that they don't want to invest in opportunities, let's say fix and flip, where the fix and flipper like basically runs out of money or stops or fails to pay back, and then all of a sudden they go and take it over, and now they have to finish that fix and flip. That's another form of passive investment, but it's going to come back to you and land on you. So you, like you said, they wanted something that they can lend and then go back to doing what they're really great at, born to do: doctor, lawyer, ball player, whatever you want to do. Like whoever you've been working with, that's what they want. And I appreciate you sharing that, because that's what resonated with helping people. Spencer, yes. What have been the benefits of investing in multifamily? I know you mentioned it, the scaling, and what are the benefits for not only you, but like your passive investors mainly?
Yeah, so the first comment I would probably say on that one, John, is to take out, like, stepping back from real estate for a second. The way I've been coaching folks, and I don't have a formal coaching program, so when I say coaching, I mean, when people reach out very often daily now and ask, whether they're friends, family, or folks on the internet, and they say, help me get to where you're at, or tell us about how we can get involved. And what I first bring up to them is, okay, this sounds nerdy and very corporate, but bear with me. We all of us have these 3 limiting factors. If you want to sound super cool, you can say LIM facts: time, capital, expertise. If you're a W-2 employee, you have some income, right? You have capital. You also have relationships, though. So by capital, what I mean is, some people, but they're not real estate folks who are deep experienced operators. You probably don't have a ton of time because you're working a full-time job. So you're working at least 40 hours a week. In many cases, I think on average, a lot of Americans are working far more than that. I was certainly working 60, 80 on most weeks before I left my day job. So then you got expertise. And the vast majority of folks that reach out to us now are folks that don't have a ton of expertise on real estate stuff specifically. So all that being said, we got to figure out how to convey to them why this asset class is so helpful and such a great fit for our own wealth, our own capital, for Jennifer and I, but also why all these Madison Investor Program members that sign up on our email list, why they think it's a good fit too. And here's the first one, which is, it's actually fully passive. The term passive investor, which I love, like the name of your show is just outstanding, because being truly passive means I don't want to lift a finger. Like I after I do the diligence and the upfront vetting, which is, by the way, like the biggest real value that we provide at Madison Investing is like we do, we background check the person that's the active manager of the project. We join them in the GP, in the general partnership. We are part of the active management of the project. We're putting our own money in. We're doing all these other steps. We get a third party underwrite. We get a third party analyst, all this other stuff. So the front loaded diligence, those are all things that you really have to put a little bit of work on. But the rest of it for multifamily, if you're working with the right partner, it's actually fully passive. The rentals we own, even with the property manager, now those are semi-passive. And that's not, I'm not going to rip on rentals. I think rentals are actually a really great thing to go and invest in. If you have no real estate, please go buy a rental instead of doing no real estate. But passive, truly passive, on a time comment, if your limiting factor is time, don't go buy rentals. Go and figure out something. Maybe it's note investing. Multifamily is what you asked about, John, and we go heavy into multifamily. Our target is to have half, for our own wealth, half of our real estate allocation, our alternative asset allocation in our own portfolio, we want allocated towards multifamily. And that's because bigger is better and it's more predictable. As a guy who is in senior leadership at these 5 software companies, I will say I've put together more revenue forecasts and financial forecasts and pro formas for a business than I care to recall. Long nights, and weekends and stuff to do that kind of stuff. And I bring that up because I like predictability. And predictability is something in the numbers that you can actually put down on paper with multifamily. And because you have like take an apartment building of 400 people, one person leaves, you still have 399 other folks that are willing to pay the rent and staying there. So you don't drop that occupancy to zero. On a rental, when one of our single family turnkey properties we have out in Kansas City actually leaves, or we have to evict, and we're actually going through one of those right now, unfortunately, then zero rent's coming in. Occupancy just went from 100% to zero. And so the predictability was way more appealing for us on the multifamily front. The bigger you go, the more stable, the more predictable. And frankly, just this morning, I was sharing a really great article that someone else sent over to me. And it was about kind of the second dynamic we're seeing out there, which is the way people live is changing. And so not everyone necessarily wants to go buy a house, live in the burbs. And so a lot of people want to live in a more flexible kind of in the action lifestyle. I mean, this is the COVID-19 context, so I'll just say this is a very big caveat. But outside the caveat of a pandemic, apartments are desirable and amenities with those apartments are super appealing. And so you see more renter, and you hear the term renter nation thrown around sometimes to kind of capture this with a nice bow. But that's real. And the demographics and changes and migration patterns of people going city to city are starting to back that up. So for all those reasons and more, I really fell in love with multifamily. And we also now went beyond it with also kind of storage facilities and mobile home parks, because we love those counter-cyclical performing in a recession asset classes as well. Same thing with multifamily.
Love it. I love it. I love how you're expanding and growing out and giving people options. And you're the perfect person. I'm a tech guy too, but you're the perfect person for one of my favorite questions is, what is something you had to implement quickly, whether it's software or a CRM? What is it that you did for the benefit of your passive investors?
Yeah, so good question. We decided pretty early that we wanted to invest in having a portal. And so by portal, what I mean is there's an entire category of these companies out there. And I bring them up because I actually think it helps bolster the education of this entire space. If you go find a crowdfunding website, and these are companies I'll bring up by name, because I do think that they're helping bring this education to the masses in a good way. Fundrise, CrowdStreet, you got Cadre, a few of these companies out there. They have platforms where you can kind of shop deals. Now, we realized people like that convenience. We also just need a way for people to be able to see the investments. When we have some investors that have done 6 or 7 different investments of somewhere between at least 50 to 100K per investment. They want to be able to see all of those deals in aggregate in one place. And so we invested in a portal, and that's something that people are able to log in and take a look at right off the bat. That's also helpful because, frankly, we actually take the time to get to know our investors. We are not a quantity shop. Like I'm not out there trying to say everyone under the sun sign up for a list. this isn't for everyone. I mean, this is for people who are wanting more of a boutique experience, meaning you'll be able to actually speak to a real human being, happens to be the CEO, that's me. If you go to our website, you sign up for the email list, and for compliance purposes, you and I do need to have like a real conversation. But even beyond that, I have a texting relationship with many of our investors. Like some of them become friends. Like you don't even have to necessarily, go grab a beer with me. I don't need that, but I do enjoy it if someone wants to meet me halfway on it. So I bring that up because that portal, it's convenient for the investors, but even more so, you got to be able to take notes and understand the track record of and history of one investor that you work with. You want to make sure you capture what they want. What are their goals? Like what are their aspirations? And you need to capture that into place so that you can go back and have meaningful conversations with them and say, hey, are we on track? Are we on track for you to hit your objectives? And so long-winded answer to your simple question, but I think, we invested in that portal, and I'm so glad that we did it earlier than I think a lot of people tend to.
I think you just answered it in a way that created another question for me to ask my guests going forward. So this is the first time I'm going to use this. What does your onboarding process look like? Because you kind of touched on it already.
Yeah. Oh, good question. I don't think anyone's asked me that before. And so when someone reaches out to our website, you get there, there's a big like join mailing list option on the top right. And as an LP and as a limited partner or a passive investor myself, what I experienced when I was doing my own research, when I went to all these different real estate company websites, was that anyone can get in. And we wanted to still have an experience where people felt like it's not exclusive. It's not like we branded it a club. We're actually changing that just to be totally transparent for everyone out there. This is how we roll. We decided club sounded too exclusive. Like we didn't want it to be something that's hyper exclusive. We really believe at our core at Madison Investing, everyone should be able to have access to these things. Now there's a $50,000 minimum per deal. So that clearly keeps it to a certain level of economic and financial status. But that said, the principle sticks. So you go there, anyone can fill out the form. I will reach out once they do that with a link to my calendar. Someone can book a time on my calendar. We have to have that conversation. And so there's a lot of folks, I bet they go to our website and I see their names come through sometimes multiple times, and they sign up and they think I'll just add them onto our mailing list because they keep trying. They do have to talk to me. I promise I won't bite. 99% of people that I talk to end up thinking it's a really fun and engaging and educational conversation, but it's really 30 to 60 minutes. And I want to know, what are you trying to do with this stuff? Like, is this even a good fit? Are you going to get what you're looking for out of this? Because, we share a newsletter once a month, really simple, with good educational content, like meaningful, actual educational content for people, and talking about deals that are likely to come. And then we share investment opportunities. And so those are the two things that we share. So in order to do that the right way, we have to make sure we're operating compliantly. So I want to get to know people on that phone call. After the phone call, though, I share some resources and some more education for them, because even if a person's brand new to this passive investing in multifamily stuff, you have to acknowledge there's an education and ramp, because on these deals, people don't just wire over. Like as a passive investor, we don't just wire over $50,000 and do that on a handshake. You're sent a document that is like a 100-page long plus legal document called a PPM, a private placement memorandum. That's the thing that pulls the whole deal together. That's the thing that states the disclosures of the risks and the financial structures and all these things. It's like a home disclosure before you buy a home. And so that's the best point of reference I can give people for when they're trying to wrap their heads around how does this stuff actually work before I pull the trigger on joining on a deal. But that's our onboarding process. Is I'm going to go and talk to people on that call. I want to know, why are they doing this? What kind of position are they in to be partnering on these deals? Are they wanting to do this in 2 years? Which is fine. I literally, right before this call today, John, I got a guy who he canceled his onboarding call, which happens sometimes, and that's fine. But he said, we're not ready to invest yet. And I said, that's fine. We're not going anywhere. We're going to be here. But please know, most people that join, I don't even have like a deal to show someone right now, and we don't. I want to get to know people outside that context, because this is a long-term relationship game. And that underpins all this stuff, is that even if someone never invests with us, I want them to walk away a promoter of this business, and a promoter meaning they're willing to tell their friends because they had such a positive experience. They got value out of it. They got education out of it. And that has now repeatedly happened for us, where we actually onboard someone, they're on our list. They have not invested and they might never, but they've referred 2 to 3 other people that already have. And that comes from taking the time. That comes from taking the time, maybe even 2 to 3 hour-long conversations with certain people. So anyways, you asked a very specific question and I gave you too wordy of an answer, but
you gave the perfect answer, and I love it. I love the fact that you noted that it's a compliant call. To stay compliant, right, you have to get to know the investor. And it's some of these offerings, the 506Bs, where you have to have the relationship tied in. And yes, if you go the other way with the Cs, the 506Cs, a third party is probably going to vet their net worth, right? So most likely, because they're looking for accredited investors, and you can market the deal. And the way to get to the deal is to have the call, right? So yes, investors have to understand that they don't have to invest on the first deal that comes by as well. They can take the time and see the process and basically get to know and feel how the operations works out, right? So it's just a process to get familiar with. And I know you're doing a lot of educating on that side. And I love that and I appreciate that. And thank you for sharing that, because the onboarding process is something I feel like people get intimidated by, but it's just a conversation and a few forms and documents. That's it. It's just a few forms.
That's right.
In a call. That's it.
That's all it is. Yeah. And frankly, like stylistically, I think we all can agree. Everyone's looking for something different out of a relationship with a partner. And I think if someone is in a mindset where they want a purely transactional relationship, meaning they don't really want to get to know the people on the other side, go to a crowdfunding platform, please. And I say that because that's more transactional. And I'm probably the only person, I don't know if I'm the only person, but one of the only people in the space who will say stuff like that, John, because I don't want someone to come in and ever partner with us unless they feel 100% comfortable and excited to do something. If someone, like on our last project, this is very brief, we had a person that did, I don't know, 30 to 40 deep questions worth of diligence on us, with us on a deal. And even before I knew he was not going to move forward, and that's absolutely fine. I told him not to because he was so deeply nervous. He was like, I could tell he was tense. He was shaking. We were on a Zoom call. This is a couple months ago. And I was like, I'll leave his name out of it, but he's a good guy. And I was just like, you gotta understand, no one should go into one of these. These are like 5-year hold period deals. That means you want to feel weird about this for 5 years. There's going to be more deals. And if you decide in a year now, 2 years from now, whenever, you move at your own pace. I personally recommend you don't do this because I think that you, investor, are not in a place right now to feel really comfortable with that. That's why you got to get to know other people. It's not because we want to do it because we don't have enough friends. We're doing it because it's helpful for you as an investor, and it's helpful for us to ensure we're solving for something that is mutually beneficial, and we got to take the time.
I love the fact that you shared that, because the psychology of it is investors invest in people, but at the same time, you got to believe in the vehicle. If you don't believe in the vehicle, for instance, in our case, it's multifamily, right? I mean, people invest numbingly in the stock market, but kind of reluctant to push the button on real estate. And part of that, and I completely get it, is the first time you have to go and wire, or the thought of wiring 50 plus. The first time, and I promise you, the second time, it's easy.
Yes.
You're familiar with it. You're good to go. And you've seen the process, and you've seen the benefits of the process still going on the first one. Nah, man, you just triggered a bunch of things that I kind of just written articles on and stuff like that. So thank you, Spencer. This has been the perfect guest to just walk down that psychology and onboarding process. I appreciate you for sharing.
You're too kind, man. Just trying to share our learnings so far. We're having a joyful experience building this business. And I think that the most fulfilling part by a landslide is when I get on a call with a person that I'm getting to know for the very first time, and we both walk away energized about continuing to build a relationship. And that's, I've learned so much about people. I've learned so much about other careers, other ways to invest. And it's an education for me daily. I don't have all the answers, but I'm seeking to understand what someone is wanting to do when they first reach out. So that's the joy. And I appreciate you just having the shot to come on here and share that education with other folks, John.
Gosh, that's beautiful. Spencer, as a passive investor, one piece of advice for the PI listeners.
Oh my gosh, just be patient. Please. I think we're in a very unique time right now. And that unique time, if you take a step back and you think about things on 10-year time scales, don't take your financial advice from headlines in mainstream media or really any media. Do your own homework and look at the market in 10-year cycles. We just wrapped up a more than 10-year economic expansion. When that last cycle ended, which was culminated in the Great Recession, that created buying opportunities in real estate. That means that there's ways to make money that you cannot replicate for another 10 years. And so I have zero crystal balls in my home. I don't know what is coming. I don't claim to have answers. I do know this though, is that education takes time. So be patient with yourself, but don't wait on getting that education, because you will not want to be there 10 years from now and the last person to the party to realize, oh, I guess now I should invest in real estate. Well, you just missed another cycle. So do it now, but don't jump into something silly. Work with people that you can actually trust. Take the time to get to know them and see if they're going to be there to help you.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Thank you. And how can we stay in touch with you?
Yeah, so two ways. So we have a website, madisoninvesting.com. If people are interested in kind of just joining, the program, it's a no obligation thing. The only rule we have is that we have a firm no jerks rule. That's really all the rules we have. Go to our website, click on that button, fill out the quick form, and I'll reach out for a call. Also, I am super active on LinkedIn. So every day I'm posting something that is real, just trying to get discussions started with real educational content and some of my own soapboxy opinions on things. Send me a connection invite. I promise I won't bite, and we will be able to start talking there.
Nah, you are very, very active on LinkedIn and post a lot of content in regards to basically investing in general. And I love it. And we go back and forth, we comment, and I love it. I love how you're responsive as well.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that, man. It means a lot.
Thank you, man, for coming on the show. It's an honor. And One last thing, it's probably my favorite question, is what is the meaning behind your company name?
I live on Madison Street. That's it. That's all there is to it.
That's it. I love it. I love it. You ain't going nowhere now. You ain't going.
Nope. We're stuck here, man. I know it's a fair question, but when people ask, like, dude, like, where'd you come up with that name? I'm like, Jennifer and I looked at each other. We're like, I don't know. You want to call it Madison Street or Madison Investing because we live on Madison Street? Sure. And that was it.
I love it. I love it. Pure honesty. It's one of my favorite questions because I'm fascinated with people, how they created the name or title for something that they're growing, or their business, or just what they just named their car or something. Why'd you name it that? So,
yeah, I know it's not that fancy or sophisticated, but we live on Madison Street, so we are Madison Investing.
Hey, you came up with the name in a simple way, just like the simple process to onboard with you guys. I love it, man. Appreciate you for coming on. Thank you, Spencer.
Yeah, thank you so much, John, for everything you do and bringing me on today. It's an honor.
PI listeners, thank you for listening. As always, we hope this was the best resource for your investment strategy, but also the best use of your time. As much as it pains us to leave you, but you know what time it is. It's time to go put this into practice. Till the next time we meet, happy investing. PI listeners, I'm grateful for your time and I appreciate you for listening. It would mean the world to me if you went to iTunes and left a rating and written review. Let me know how you feel about the show. It really makes a big difference with getting the podcast out there. Don't forget about our Facebook group, where all of our guests are members of. I'll be there to answer any of your questions, or even questions you might have for future guests. Subscribe so you can get the latest episodes and our fan favorite quick hitters. Finally, I want to keep you updated, so head over to johnfortes.com and sign up for the newsletter. If you're interested in partnering with me, sign up on the contact page so you can talk to me directly. I look forward to connecting with you. Happy investing.